2022. Stephen McKinney has joined us. Stephen is CEO of nSide, the school safety platform. Stephen, good morning, sir. How are you on this Tuesday? Everything okay?
Doing well. Well, it's still a sad week, Paul. But, yeah, we're
that
doing
it
well.
is. I don't know if you heard me just a few seconds ago, but this other disturbing bit of information that came out where this guy was known to kill cats and put them in a bag and carry them around for, as he said, shiitakes and giggles, make people laugh. And, I mean, this guy had and we're going to find out more things, too. But the problem is we cannot come together because it's that old, we give them an inch, they will take a mile. Nobody trusts anybody anymore. Your thoughts on this?
Yeah, and, all of these things are definitive signs. We know this happens. The something you were talking about earlier, Paul, is, the social media and how so much of the information about these individuals gets out there, and how do we deal with that? One of the number one things across all of the events that have happened, the Secret Service calls it leakage, right? And effectively, that's what it is proclaiming their problems, their issues, and intent a lot of times. And so one of the key things that we have to do is educate our school community and educate our students on how to report these things. The number one thing that gets to us, that method of averting these, is reporting by the students themselves. There's been two major reports that have come out, one by the U.S. Secret Service and one by the U.S. DOJ, and both of them confirm that's the number one source of information. So, we have to provide good reporting methods for these kids and for the teachers so that action can be taken to, avert these things, prevent them before there's an issue.
Last week we had Mike Kinn on. Mike is a former superintendent of Madison County School District. And Mike said something, too, that they have a program like that in schools. And I'm just don't know if it's publicized enough. And it shouldn't be just in schools. I would like us to put enough public relations power behind this that we know that number as well as we do before we dig at 811 or an emergency number at 911. We do these safety things. We have Amber Alerts, and everybody knows that now. It's part of the lexicon, and we should have something that a parent, a grandparent, a school, a teacher, somebody could call and say, look, watch out for this. And it should be done on a local basis, as we know, and it could be done. I think, regardless of what you think about the former president, Donald Trump, on Friday, he argued that our country should make it easier to confine deranged people and eliminate gun-free school zones after a gunman killed 19 children. Now, when you hear the former president say we need to eliminate gun-free zones, everybody's going to jump all over him for that. But I'm telling you, statistically, those kids had a better chance of surviving if we had armed and trained teachers or staff on the inside than they did to have police people on the outside. I mean, statistically, they could have probably put an end to this. Here's what the president said.
This is not a matter of money. This is a matter of will. If the United States has $40 billion to send to Ukraine, we should be able to do whatever it takes to keep our children safe at home.
Difference in leadership. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and just to follow up on the reporting aspect, as you're kind of implying there, one of the things that the state of Mississippi has done now, and as part of the program that we're rolling out, is we have a tip line, a tip structure in place for every school in every district. They can use other options if they want to, but this becomes at least a uniform backup for them. If they already have something in place, they can definitely do that. But you can find out more information in nSide.io/tips, and that is available for anyone to be able to submit tips, and that will get directly to the school system. They now have the ability to set that up for groups so that they can get that information directly to the school. So there are mechanisms out there that we're trying, and again, it's like you said, publicizing some of that.
Who staffs that, Stephen? Who staffs it?
So it's initially screened by my staff, and then it is immediately distributed to the list of school officers or school resources that the school has defined. So superintendents, principals, assistant principals, counselors, school resource officers, those individuals immediately get it. But my team will also screen those, and if there is not an action taken, they in the first couple of hours follow up on that.
Is part of that working with the law enforcement to also make them aware of this?
Yes, sir, and that's part of what we're actively doing as part of this program we're rolling out. So right now we've trained 433 people in the last 60 days. The project is composed of 4 phases. We've completed 25 districts in the first phase already. So that's 18% of our districts are completed. Our goal, is to get this completely rolled out in this 18-month period. And the contract is a 3-year period. But as part of that, we do go and work with each district to create better relationships with their local police. And we even encourage them to engage in a memorandum of understanding, a formal relationship with those officers where they are able to come on school campuses and work with the staff for the training that is required by state law. And so that those relationships are part of there's 5 major things that we've found. 5 major things that we found that are absolutely critical. One, you've got to educate the school as a whole, the community, on the signs of this so that they will have an understanding of, I should report this, and then how to report it, the lines and the different mechanisms of reporting. The next is relationships. You've got to establish those relationships with your local law enforcement. There should be a open dialogue with your local law enforcement and your first responder community as a whole. Then we need to be able to do things like behavioral threat assessments, which goes back to what you were talking about as well. There were so many signs with this individual, so many, and there always are. And this is the way that you kind of capture that and get it into a process to, either eliminate that person as a threat, to isolate them, or to provide them resources or some way to get them out of this cycle. And then, the things that we do know is most of the time it's motivated by some kind of grievance. That's why the kids are so important, because they report this stuff. And then lastly, of course, is our SROs, which we know are just absolutely critical. You must have.
What is that? What was the last one?
School resource officers.
The school resource officers. I want to clear something up, because they were in this Uvalde thing. They kept talking about there was a school resource officer, and then I'm getting information from a multitude of people. Resource officers don't carry weapons. Then somebody said yes, they could. Maybe so. I don't know. He or she might or might not have had a weapon.
If they are a sworn officer and not a security guard, they carry a weapon. And that's
will a security guard does a security guard not carry a weapon?
Often not.
Okay. All right. We got more to talk about on this one, and a couple of other stories of this. And I want you to, again, kind of lay out exactly what nSide is, and more information, and exactly how many schools that you have, how many are in the state, what percentage of schools that are working with you, and some changes that you see need to be made first and foremost, maybe some of the top 3. All with Stephen McKinney coming up, more, and then Jay McDaniels joins us coming up at 8:05. It is a Tuesday. This is it. These are all the days in May that God's given us. It's May 31st. Tomorrow will be June 1st. Summer is here. We'll be back live in the Trustmark studios on a Tuesday, and we thank you so very, very much for joining us. Checking account designed to fit you to a T, as in Trustmark. People you trust, advice that works. Member FDIC. One opening here, a 10-year-old Florida kid over the weekend was arrested. He had sent text messages in which he allegedly threatened to shoot up a school. Kid's name is Daniel Isaac Marquez. Comes just 5 days after the 19 children, two teachers killed at Robb Elementary School. According to the Lee County Sheriff's Office in Florida, Marquez is a fifth grader at Patriot Elementary School in Cape Coral, Florida. After being interviewed by authorities, Marquez was charged with making a written threat to conduct a mass shooting, and this kid is 10 years old. Probably didn't have the manner to do that, but in 3 years he's going to be a teenager. So Stephen, what do we do with this kid now? How do you follow that along?
Yeah. And you know, one of the things that's a pattern is there are almost always behavioral problems, other things like that are, can be identified even as early as this. And one of the ways to deal with that goes back to what we kind of mentioned before, is behavioral threat assessments. So a behavioral threat assessment is, in essence, where you bring together multiple disciplines of individuals in your school staff. So, for instance, you have a educator / administrator, a school resource officer, ideally a mental health professional or guidance counselor. And what they do is they review all of these incidents that are coming through that are reported by students or teachers, and do this structured assessment so that you can start to get those people either the resources that they need to get help, or get them isolated, or do something. And that's just absolutely critical.
That is the best case scenario if everything comes together. And 99% of the time it doesn't. Simply because if we identify and we finally say, look, nobody can control this with this kid. He is, or she, and most of the time, of course, it's he. He's out of control. He is a danger to not only himself, but everybody he's around. We don't know what the heck this kid's going to do. There is no family structure at all. Then what do you do with the kid? What do you do? And that's the other part of the problem that society hasn't figured out. Because we are terrible when it comes to mental health care.
Yes. And that's exactly a huge part of the problem, right? If we put these processes in place, we do have to have a mechanism for them to be appropriately executed afterwards, right? That you've got to be able to do something about it, like you said. So, the first step with that, though, is putting in place these processes. And then, there is elements that have to be worked with.
Let me do this, because I don't want to run out. I don't want to run out of time. But I think people need to know how nSide came about and exactly what the mission statement is, because you guys are working statewide now with all the schools, and so if there are some people out there who maybe have locked their desk away, but they're doing things the outside now, some summertime, they may be able to hear this now where they couldn't if class was on. So, again, what is nSide? How did it come to be a factor, and your mission statement?
Yes, sir. So, basically, I started working in school safety after the 2007 Virginia Tech shooting. We've been working since then to build out a platform that allows schools to have a standard way of collecting all of their information, preparing, planning for emergency operations plans, and then practicing those drills and training, having a singular place to do all that in a way that is place-based, so location-based. And so everything ties back to a map. Part of the reason that's so important is because the second piece of that, of course, is a application that is shared with 911 operators so that they can communicate those plans and information about location when something happens.
But didn't we see in Uvalde, they had, within several weeks prior, had a mass shooting drill.
Yes.
And then, for some reason, and I'm not sure who the teacher was, but she probably, or he probably, has to undergo counseling because they left that door open, propped open. And if that door was shut and they had only a single entry point, things may have turned out a lot different.
And this is a serious problem that we help to identify. As part of this process that we're doing with 1,003 of the 1,039 schools in the state of Mississippi, we come in and help them do an initial physical security assessment. That's part of this process. And so what you would see there at Uvalde was that was a school that was older architecture and built, and it had multiple buildings. And a lot of our old elementary schools are structured that way. Makes it very hard to have, controlled entry to that facility, because you have all of these. And so it's effectively connected by open, sidewalks and covered walkways. So you have all of these points of entry. So you have to come up with different strategies on how you secure these older
on each individual
like
school.
That's right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Well,
and so it's very difficult.
With cameras and technology, probably lower and less expensive than it's ever been before. I mean, a Ring camera and things like that. And there are new models coming out every single day. But I mean, on that particular door, they could have rigged that door with some kind of sound alarm that could not be taken off. And until that door is actually shut, there's going to be a buzzer there. And it's not an option. So, I mean, things like that, it shouldn't be that expensive to do.
They're not. The cost is coming way, way down on all of that. Just like you said, technology is affording us the ability to do these kind of things. And even if you can't afford an expensive, nice access control system, there are ways to have open and shut door sensors, right, for a few bucks, that at least will tell you if the door's propped open, so that someone gets a notification. And that would have been one of those situations, absolutely. Someone should have been notified that door had been propped open. But also it's a training issue. You've got to get people to understand these kind of concepts. It's about educating them about why you have to do these things.
I know people are really worried about a teacher. They think about some of probably the weirdest and most bizarre teacher carrying a gun on his or her hip during a math class, and nobody's talking about that. We're talking about a very select few, if any, in a school that qualify. You would have to qualify, and I think they should be positioned at certain locations, locked behind a safe where only they can get it. And if the alarm goes off, then there are some strategically loaded firearms like fire extinguishers that they can access. And people have talked about, well, how do you know the shooter from the teacher? And I mean, it's easy as in there would be some type of colored vest, and everybody knows exactly who has that vest on if the police come in. So, I mean, all of these things are I think, doable. But I agree with Lindsey Graham. Graham said something over the weekend. He said that it should be from a local perspective. Here's what he said. And I think I have it here somewhere. Lindsey Graham said this over the weekend.
I'm not for a red flag law at the federal level. This should be done by the states, and those who choose to go down this road, we can help them with more money for cops and mental health workers. When you see people about to blow, give the cops, and with plenty of due process, the chance to go stop it before it starts. That makes perfect sense to me.
I would think anything with a police report where police have to be called to their home or to the school should be duly recorded, and somewhere that followed up as far as buying a firearm. I'll give you the final word when we come back in just a moment. Stephen McKinney, who is founder of and CEO of nSide, the school safety platform. How many schools are you doing now, Stephen?
We have right at 3,600 schools that we're doing.
3,600 schools?
3,600.
How many states?
Across, that covers 4 states.
4 states. All right, final segment with Stephen McKinney, and your final thoughts on this one, where we go and what we should do, especially in the state of Mississippi, that inroads we need to make before the school resumes in the fall. Yes, sir.
So first thing is I want to assure parents and staff and everyone that the state of Mississippi is taking aggressive action on this. And before this event happened, they had taken aggressive action on this. This is a statewide program. There's 1,003 schools that we are implementing this in. And so, we are at 60 days in today, and we've completed 25 districts for the first phase. So we're doing a lot. And that I just want to communicate that we're doing a lot, and the state takes this very seriously. Brian McGarity is the director of Safe and Orderly Schools with the Department of Education in Mississippi, and he and I work very closely together. Our team works together every week, and we're doing as much as we can. But the keys to this are exactly what we've talked about. We have to do a better job of working with our first responders. Yeah. We have to do a better job of teaching people what to look for and how to communicate that. Those are critical factors.
Yeah. Stephen, would this start with the school board doing this appropriation, and how much money are we talking about, and are there funds available? But for an average size school, what are we talking about the financial responsibility of getting this done?
Well, and actually, for this 3-year period that we're in, this was a federal program. And so the state of Mississippi engaged with us for 3 years to do this statewide. So there's no cost to the schools. What all they have to do is, work with us to get their information in, and then we work with them to train them. That's the key to it. So the thing that we want to get the word out about is that, we're trying to communicate with them and make sure that they are aware and that they're getting their information in and that this program is active. But that is probably the most important, most salient point, is that we need to, have them aware.
So the website is nSide, and by the way, nSide is spelled, it's kind of unique, with a small N, and then everything else is caps. Oh, no, the S is caps. N, cap S, and then IDE. And it's on the website. I'm sure you can Google it up. But all the other information is there, and the phone numbers and the contacts. And I'm sure you got a Q&A too, so there's no reason to do that. Once you get this done, how long does it take for you to contact them and set something up for a meeting?
Usually what we are going through, this process, it takes, from start to finish, it takes about 3 to 4 weeks, right? And so we're doing multiples at the same time, but it's about a 3 or 4 week process that we go through with the schools. And it concludes with us being on site in every district and training.
And I would imagine there's a lot of differences between being a rural school, a school that's located way out in the rural areas or of a small town, and a metro area school. I mean, there's got to be a lot of differences in needs and everything else. Will you speak to that?
Absolutely. And, one of the things that we find, honestly, is the rural schools, they need our help. They need our help. The more metro area schools, they have more resources, things like that. They may have a lot of things already done, but the rural schools need assistance getting this done. And so that's one of the key factors why this time is so important, is while we have this going, we have the opportunity to lift those schools up, and we focus a lot on them because their situation is drastically different.
It is a different world than we live in, and I've said this before, you would think we'd never be in a position where this becomes a trendy thing or fashionable to target innocent kids in schools. But when you're talking about deranged people, the macabre sometimes is the normal for them. But we're learning more and more about this guy, and it is not really good. The other thing, too, and I saw this article, if you really wanted to track the increase or decrease in mass shootings, you listen to people, and I saw this figure. The figure was that we've had, I think it's 27 mass shootings this year is what somebody put out. And I thought, that cannot be right. So I did some research on that. Reason Magazine kind of clarified with some other input that the way you classify a mass shooting is as political as the event itself sometimes. Reason Magazine column focused on school mass shooting incidents and showed that there have been 13 what the FBI originally classified as a mass school shooting since, are you ready for this? 1966. Far below the 27 incidents which the gun control lobby claims to have happened just this year. We can't help ourselves. Everything is politicized. Stephen, thank you, man. I appreciate it very much. We have